When it comes to football, I feel like there's that one player that each of us can kind of think of that we really don't want to see succeed.
Well. Audio will tell you all you need to know.
Football fans tune in to watch not only their favorite players, but also the ones that they despise. So today, let's take a look at the 10 NFL players we'd most hate to see win it all. Eli Apple. Ever since he entered the league, Apple has been one of the most outspoken players and least popular players in the NFL. And bizarrely, he isn't even the type of player that you hate to play against, but you'd love to have on your team. Despite being a solid cornerback, it seems like no one really wants Apple on their team because of the inherent distraction he brings. Not to mention all the insane hate he garners, not just from opposing fans, but also other players around the league. That is just how insanely disliked Eli Apple is. In a time period that players are regularly criticized for being too buddy-buddy with the opposition, Apple has found a way to isolate himself from the fraternity, and routinely finds himself getting clowned on by other players when things go wrong for him. Last year's Super Bowl is a perfect example of this. The Bengals were within striking distance of a victory, but it all came crashing down when Matt Stafford torched Apple, connecting with Cooper Kupp for the game-winning touchdown. Twitter subsequently exploded as everyone wanted to get their shots in at the mouthy quarterback. Needless to say, the last thing we needed is for him to get a ring. The man would be insufferable on his victory lap. Although he doesn't have quite the resume that Apple does, I think that we'd really hate to see Zach Wilson, the New York Jets young quarterback, win a Super Bowl as well. Wilson has not had the same degree of public feuding, but I think that considering the entitled attitude he's put on display during his first couple of seasons in the Big Apple, a Super Bowl victory might push Wilson into a new level of arrogance and annoyingness, for lack of a better term.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
Especially if you think about what it would take for him to win one now. I mean, he couldn't be in a better situation than he is in New York. There is just so much talent around him, and the idea of that nasty defense and playmakers like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall carrying this bona fide baby to a ring is truly nauseating. At this point, I think you'd be hard-pressed to even find all that many Jets fans that want Wilson to succeed. Interestingly, I'd wager that Arizona Cardinals fans are starting to feel the same way about their young signal caller, Kyler Murray, which is something no one would have predicted in Murray's early days. I mean, the former Offensive Rookie of the Year was electrifying when he first got into the league, and quickly gained the respect of Cardinals and NFL fans alike. The entire narrative around Murray changed, and changed fast, however, as he, like Wilson, has shown himself to be a bit of a spoiled, self-centered person who is utterly unaware of his shortcomings as a player. No matter how obviously poor his performance was, Murray has been quick to deflect and even pass on the blame and criticism. The only thing that has saved Kyler from having his popularity completely zapped was that his main adversary was his head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, who the general public has long been pretty meh on. Now that Kingsbury is out of Arizona, there is no one to shield Kyler from the criticism.
Kyler Murray don't care about nobody but Kyler Murray. That's just a matter of the fact.
And it's on him to develop into the leader that Arizona thought he was and get the Cardinals over the hump and into serious playoff contention. Next up, another pretty obvious one. The Cleveland Browns quarterback, DeShaun Watson. The case of DeShaun Watson is a strange one too, because there was a time that he was one of the most popular young quarterbacks around the league. His name was regularly mentioned with the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and he was a generally sympathetic character for having the misfortune of existing in the eternal state of chaos that was, and still is, the Houston Texans organization. Unfortunately, all of that goodwill came to a screeching halt when reports alleged that the former Clemson quarterback was essentially a closeted sex pest who routinely harassed and assaulted his masseuses. The hate for Watson only ratcheted up once he ultimately got himself out of the bulk of trouble by settling with the women outside of court. And it absolutely skyrocketed once Cleveland signed him to one of the most insane contracts we've ever seen. despite Watson having essentially been out of football for 2 full years. In the NFL, there's nothing that is supposed to be promised. Watson got a fully guaranteed 5-year deal worth around $250 million. And now, Browns fans are forced into a brutal spot of having to root for one of the truly skeevy characters out there. The rest of us, well, we aren't exactly in the same predicament where we need to choose between our loyalty to the laundry and our morals. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that DeShaun is fairly high on most people's list of players they don't want to see succeed. As is one of his teammates, Myles Garrett. Although it's for way different reasons, clearly. People would be none too excited to see the Browns defensive end hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Garrett has developed a reputation for being one of the dirtiest players in the league. He is regularly getting into unnecessary skirmishes, and the icing on the cake was his incident, to put it lightly, with then Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph when Garrett legitimately swung his helmet at a defenseless Rudolph and really tanked his own stock. Garrett certainly isn't as reviled as DeShaun Watson, but I think that fans would still be pretty content not to see him ever win a Super Bowl. There we got another meltdown on the field that is apples to apples with Garrett. Joey Bosa, the Los Angeles Chargers defensive end, has definitely developed enough of a reputation amongst NFL fans to have the public take a rooting interest against him. Bosa is a true hothead and can often be found yelling on the sidelines as well as the field. And recently, during the Chargers' laughable collapse against the Jags, we saw that explosive temper bubble to the surface when he took his helmet off on the field to scream about an official's call following a pivotal Jacksonville touchdown. Unsurprisingly, the officials did not take to this all too kindly. And they flagged Bosa, moving the Jags to the 1-yard line for a critical 2-point attempt. Sensing the momentum shift, the Jags converted the opportunity, and that extra point ended up being the difference in their 31-30 victory, embarrassing Bosa and the Chargers, and all doing us a favor by eliminating the mercurial defensive end from Super Bowl contention. In addition to Bosa having made himself somewhat hateable as an individual, he has also the hilariousness of the Chargers franchise working against him. Because even if the fans don't have anything against him as a person in particular, we can't seem to help ourselves but to root for the Chargers to continue to choke away talent-laden rosters and playoff games. Something that, based off his abysmal showing during their crunch time of this year's playoffs, seems to have attached itself to Bosa as well. This is actually not too dissimilar to what we saw play out when the Dallas Cowboys choked away opportunity after opportunity against the San Francisco 49ers. For starters, people love to hate the laundry because of the man who owns it and their obnoxious run of success during the late 90s. But Jerry Jones and all his antics aside, this new crop of Cowboys has found its own unique ways to garner hate from the public. Micah Parsons in particular. So much so that it seemed like people were just as excited, if not more, to see Parsons himself come up short this year, as they were to see the inevitable downfall of Jones and the other long-tenured Cowboys like Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Although his ability on the field is damn near impossible to deny, and to his credit, he did play well during his postseason outings thus far in his career, but still Parsons has managed to carve out a unique niche of hateability with his brash and generally tone-deaf social media presence. And like we alluded to, anytime your wagon is hitched to the likes of Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, and all the despised Cowboys players of yesteryear, other fans around the league are going to be quick to turn on you, no matter how exciting of a player you actually are on the gridiron. That is just the nature of the beast in the NFL, where the star on your helmet garners a certain amount of hate no matter what. Moving on, we have 3 veteran signal callers to close out our list of players that frankly no one wants to see hoist the Lombardi Trophy. First up, Matt Ryan. Now, admittedly, this one I feel a little bit bad about, because there's nothing all that hateable about the veteran QB. But through all of his collapses over the years, both in the regular season and famously during the playoffs, I think fans have reached a point with Matty Ice that we want him to go down as the preeminent choke artist. And let's face it, Ryan winning a ring, even if he was carried to it during the twilight of his career, would really put a damper on all those jokes that the internet loves to get off at his expense. So for those reasons alone, and really nothing to do with who he is as a person or a player, we have to include Matt Ryan of 28-3 fame on our list of players we'd hate to see win a Super Bowl. Though he hasn't failed on the same big stage as Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins has low-key found himself in the same camp of choke artist. You know, being a generally well-liked guy who's an above-average quarterback during the regular season that everyone loves to root against once the pressure gets turned up. There's something magical about a guy like Kirk that you can set your watch to choking. I mean, think about this year's playoffs. The second that the pressure was on and Minnesota needed him, he just vanished. as evidenced by that horrendous check down on tight end TJ Hawkinson, which he delivered on 4th down in the closing seconds of the Vikings' loss to the underdog Giants. I mean, in what world is that the right decision to make? Especially when you have a freak wideout like Justin Jefferson at your disposal. But lucky for us, Kirk stays doing Kirk-like things, and we get to continue successfully rooting against his postseason success. And last but not least, we have Jimmy Garoppolo, who, like our previous 2 QBs, doesn't do much to provoke hate from fans, but still manages to garner those feelings with relative ease. Obviously, with Garoppolo, there's a degree of jealousy in the equation. I mean, he's a good-looking guy who has played for strong teams and seems to regularly find himself in laughably good situations. Kind of like Vince Chase from Entourage, things have always just seemed to work out for Jimmy G, which as a regular Joe makes it pretty easy to hate on him and root against him, especially once playoff time rolls around. But which player would you most hate to see win a Super Bowl? Was there anyone that we missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.